A guy that I've worked with for a long time, very experienced regenerative farmer, once said to me many years ago, there's no point learning how to stand up while you're water skiing and then asking the boat to slow down, because you're just going to fall back in the water. Once you learn how to stand up, you've got to let the boat go faster so you stay up. And I've never forgotten that, in my extension role, because that's the challenge, is once you're on the path to change, there's no point part changing, because you won't be successful. You have to take the full leap. If it's a major change, it's different than if you're just tweaking machinery or changing from product A to product B. That's a minor change. But if you're doing a major change on your farm business, you can't do it half. You've got to do it whole. You've got to do the whole thing. And that requires that confidence within yourself to go through. And that's a scary thing.
The Biological Farming Roundtable podcast helps farmers explore innovative, low-input, regenerative and profitable farming systems. The Biological Farming Roundtable is sponsored by Nutrisoil, an award-winning biological liquid fertiliser made from a big worm farm. Nutrisoil's purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food. My name is Nicola Maddock. I work at Nutrisoil. I envisage a future where farmers are rewarded for producing nutrient-rich foods and consumers have this easily available to them. Today's conversation is with agroecologist David Hardwick. David has over 20 years' experience in farming and food systems and delivers extension projects to farmers across Australia on soil health, biofertilisers and bioferments. He's a great guy to have a chat with about the psychology of change and the real issues involved in moving from high-input conventional systems to low-input regenerative systems. David's approach is not to tell you how to do it, it's to lay it all out on the table, show you how to make your own decisions for your individual farming operation. This is my conversation with David Hardwick. Great to have you on the show today, David.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me, Nicola.
Awesome. So, becoming an agroecologist, tell us how you became an agroecologist.
Yeah, well, I guess my career started off, I was a farmhand on a few properties, and I ended up milking cows on organic dairy. And while I was there, I always wondered how my boss, successfully milked cows and had good quality milk and made a good living. And he used to often say, I work with nature. Being an organic farmer, that was the phrase he used, I work with nature. And I always used to wonder what that meant, but you could certainly see the results in the cows and the farm business. So yeah, that got me thinking, and I decided to go on and do further study and sort of work out how you can work with nature in agriculture. And obviously that field is what they call agroecology. So there was luckily enough, there was a degree being offered by Sydney Uni, a Bachelor of Ecological Agriculture. And so I jumped at that and moved to Orange and went through the course. Yeah, so that gave me training in how to see farms as ecosystems and how to work with a complex system to get both production and long-term sustainability in a farm business. Yeah.
Is there much difference between an agroecologist and an agronomist?
Yeah, there's a bit of difference and there's a bit of overlap. Sure, growing crops and pastures and raising animals is all, part of agronomy, but I guess the agroecology takes the wider context as well, in that you're managing a farm in a landscape. So there's those landscape processes of the water cycle, nutrient cycles, geology, the natural insects and the dynamics of those communities across the landscape and how that interacts with your animals and crops. So you get a broader understanding, I guess, of how the whole system works, which is where that ecology comes in on top of the agronomy. So it just gives you that extra set of thinking that you can use when managing a farming system.
Do you work with organics only, or do you also work with people who aren't organic? No,
yeah, pretty much most of the guys I work with in the consultancy and extension work we do are non-organic, but certainly there's a there's a fair minority that are organic. So we work across both conventional and organic and regenerative type farming systems. Yeah.
Give us an idea of the type of work. So if you're working with a client, what would you do?
Yeah, so most of our work at Soilland Food is extension. So we do, facilitating change with groups of farmers usually. So it's farmer group training as well as just capacity building. So we often work in groups around soils and managing their soils better and building their own skills in making soil decisions, land management decisions, grazing decisions, just helping them to think through for themselves, new ways to farm on their place. I guess that's what Extension's all about, is just helping facilitate change. But certainly we do some one-on-one stuff, just helping people transition over to a more regenerative / ecological way of agriculture. Yeah, at the moment working with a few dairy farmers that are really struggling and trying to get off that really high input, low profit approach. Yeah, to a more sustainable way of dairy farming. Yeah.
Two things in that. So where do you find the people to come to those courses to start with?
Yeah, well, often I'm contracted by either government agencies or Landcare networks or farmer networks like Vic No-Till or Landcare networks across Australia, or the government agencies and the regional bodies. So I do a lot of work in North Queensland with sugarcane communities and the dairying communities in Victoria. So I guess a lot of it's word of mouth and just those networks and organisations. Yeah, occasionally individual farmers approach me, but most of the work we do is with farmer groups. Yeah.
And then your high input conventional person, where do you start?
Yeah, well, I guess it's sitting down and seeing where they're at and how they think and what their challenges are and why they're thinking to change, what's triggered this sort of, what's triggered in them a way of, they have to change, and then trying to identify what the barriers are to change. And it's often a thinking thing, obviously. It's often, taking a new perspective on how to do it. So that's the challenge, and once that's clear to them as well as to you, then you can sort of collectively try to work out what new things they need to understand or build skills in so they can change. Because it's easy to sort of know the theory, but unless they've got the practical confidence to make decisions around a new topic, it's hard to do it. So people have got to build that confidence around a new topic so they can make a major economic decision that that has risk for the family business. So that takes time, and that's a process that I call the capacity building process, where you build an understanding, like soil health, for example. You've got to get your head around soils before you can make decisions around them, get a more deeper understanding of soils and the biology side as well as the chemistry, and then you can make more informed decisions for your farm. Yeah, but that takes time and learning and stuff. So it's not a quick fix often. It's a journey, or whatever the jargon is that people go on. Yeah. What's
the initial trigger? I mean, they've obviously got a reason for coming to your events, yet they're still in that conventional space. What's triggered them to book in?
Yeah, well, I guess it's different things for different people, and often change is a result of many years of accumulated sort of thinking for most people, for all of us in anything in life. But it's often economic pressure, or it's a bit of peer pressure as well, or family members sort of opening, saying we need to think differently. But often economics is at the heart of it. The things that used to work are no longer working, or there's more and more hassles in the day-to-day enterprise, like more problems, more pests, fertilisers aren't working effectively. We don't seem to get the rainfall getting into the soil that we used to get, all of those things, So there's probably an accumulation of things, and then people sort of think, okay, well, this approach isn't getting me what I need. I need to look outside the square, and where do I go to find that? Well, I need to start attending workshops and listening to other farmers, and just starting to build that new perspective. Yeah.
So once you see a new face come into your workshop, what would be the time frame before you saw them sort of getting involved in doing those things on their farm?
Oh, well, I guess it really depends on the individual, but if they're in a community of other farmers and there's like-minded farmers, or farmers that are changing and innovating new ways, regenerative ways of agriculture, then obviously those other farmers are really going to support and help that person too. So it might speed up the change that they go through. But with our for example, we do a soils extension program called Digging Deeper, which is a 6-month program where once a month a group of farmers get together and they practice soil skills and soil decision making in a group and looking at new ways of doing their soil management. By the end of that 6 months, most of the participants are pretty confident to read their own soil tests, make decisions relevant for themselves, to make changes for their own place. So that takes time. It's like learning an instrument or any new profession. You've got to learn the fundamentals, then you've got to practice the basic skills. And once you've done those two things, then you can start to innovate and apply it, in your professional life. It takes time, skills building. And it's the same with soils and regenerative ag. You've got to practice the different skills and decision making, before you can really jump in and do it effectively. So everyone's at a different point, but yeah, I think we're seeing people sort of really question the current model, the industrial model in a lot of Australian farming sectors. So I think people are really opening up to the fact that we've got to do things differently. Rural communities are declining, there's less family farms, and it's less economic to farm. The margins are getting much tighter. So can we do things differently? Because we all want to keep agriculture thriving and we want to keep our rural communities going too. So that's the other side to it. Yeah.
So do you see people continue to work with their agronomist as closely or at all?
Sometimes, yeah. It depends on the agro as well as the person, I guess, a bit. So sometimes, it just helps them once they've built their own skills up around soils, for example, they're just more of an informed partner when it comes to their soil decisions. So they still will use an agro. Other times people move away from the traditional agronomist that they might have been using because that agronomist may not be open to new ways of doing things. So I guess it depends on the situation. But certainly, a good agro that's customer focused, he's gonna be learning as much as advising, through that process too, or he or she. So yeah, so it's it depends on the individual, but a lot of people, look for new consultants or new places to get their information. Yeah, it's difficult. I'd use the example of the guys that go organic in their across to organic dairying from conventional dairying, where there's not a lot of information /support /agricultural advice for the organic dairying systems. And so, they've got to look for new ways to get information because often the conventional information and consultancy services really don't understand that different way of doing things, that it's really got to be low input, pasture based to be economic. So, otherwise, it's not economic. Yeah.
Do you think people save money with this system?
Yeah, I think you can be more profitable. It is a business though, so you've got to line all the ducks up and get everything right. I mean, if you just partly do it well, and there's other areas of the farm business that are not being done well, then the whole thing can fall over. As you know, Nacala, farming's a package deal, and you've got to get all parts to the package in place. So, but yeah, look, you see profitability go up. Sometimes yield goes down, and people will get whispers about them in the pub or whatever, but it's really not yield that's the main business thing. For a business, it's profit. Whether you're farming or you're running a bakery, you've got to make a profit. So you do see profitability increase, and you're managing that risk of, the financial risk or the climate risk for the longer term. So when you get it right, yeah.
Is there many broadacre people coming to these events?
Yeah, we've run them around the place, so we certainly do them in the cropping zones of New South Wales, and now we're starting to work in Victoria a bit, yeah. And then the other areas that we work in the extension, soil and farm management extension, is in the cane and the tropical fruits and grazing. So yeah, through Queensland and then into New South Wales, yeah. So yeah, we work sort of across all different farming systems, yeah.
What would a conventional cropper first address if they wanted to start reducing their inputs? Yeah,
well, I guess the big challenge for the cropping is the low organic matter and usually poor biological health of cropping soils in Australia, over many decades of intensive cropping and inputs and things. So that's the real challenge, how to rebuild organic matter /structure / biological function, and it's not an easy one to fix. So you can't buy instant solutions in a bottle. So obviously there's some biological products around, there's new cover cropping techniques, there's no-till techniques. So there's a whole range of tools you've got, but at the heart of it is, how do I get organic matter and structure back in the topsoil? And it's definitely not an easy one, especially in low rainfall areas where things take time. But the traditional farming systems of the Australian cropping zone were actually a sheep-wheat sort of system. So you had a pasture phase and then a cropping phase on a paddock. So that pasture phase might have been anywhere up to 7 years under pasture, perennial pasture, with sheep, carefully grazed on it. And so that pasture phase was traditionally the soil building phase, where organic matter and aggregation or structure was built, and then that area would go back under cropping for a few years. This is obviously before no-till. And then after a few years of cropping and intensive use for crops, the soil structure would decline, the organic matter would decline, the crops would start to lose yield potential, and then they'd rotate back under a pasture. So that was the traditional farming system. So we know that perennial pastures, when they're well managed, not overgrazed or whatever, can rebuild and reaggregate topsoils. But not everyone can bring back animals in a pasture phase, but it's certainly a really important tactic. There's a lot to learn from the old farming systems. Yeah. And there are still people, obviously, that have that approach. But, yeah, there are a lot of people that did stop that approach in the 90s and late 80s, 90s.
Do you see many people bringing animals back in? Yeah,
you do see it. And I think, the growing awareness with people like Gabe Brown and the multi-species and the planned grazing. And, so you do see animals coming back into the cropping farming systems in Australia, even into cane, which traditionally used to have cattle many, many years ago, but hasn't seen cattle within the actual cane part of the property for some time. But now we're getting a few of the cane guys are starting to bring cattle in the rotation. So, that's Simon Matson, a cane farmer up there at Mackay. He's just brought cattle in last year to his cane areas in rotation with multi-species cover crops. So, we're definitely seeing that tactic come back in. So, again, another part to the puzzle. Yeah.
What about addressing the summer fallow? So we are hearing that green plants, as much as possible all year round, are very important. What's your advice there?
Yeah, that's another tricky one, isn't it? Because obviously water is a limiting factor in dryland cropping zones, and the traditional thinking has been that I've got to keep a bare fallow to build my moisture profile for the following, usually winter cash crop. I think then you've got the guys that are doing either pasture cropping or summer cover crops saying, well, we were able to have enough moisture for both summer and winter, and it's really challenging the current paradigm. It's definitely the challenge, and I guess the first thing is to say, well, how is that possible? Because you do see yield trials in the past. I was involved with researching in fertilisers, and you'll always see a greater yield where you had a bare fallow because you had more moisture in the ground. But what we're realising is that when you improve the structure of a soil, so when you get back that aggregation, those aggregates and those pores back in the soil, you build the sponge, so to speak, or the bucket for plant water. So you actually increase the amount of plant available water in the soil when you re-aggregate a soil. So when your structure's improved, you increase the plant available water, so you end up with a larger bucket of soil water than you would have had just under bare fallow. So therefore there can be water for both the two crops in the year. And the third part to it that often people forget is that just by having that cover over the summer as well, you increase the infiltration rate, particularly with summer storm events in northern Australia. So there's more water that's gone into the topsoil that in a bare fallow will often just run off as surface runoff. So you can actually build your overall plant available bucket of water in the topsoil, and therefore you have more water for both the summer crops, cover crops if you're doing them, and your cash crop. So it's looking more holistically at the plant available water system, and that's definitely the discussions that we're having at some of the field days with the guys around that whole space. The challenge is to how to get that aggregation to improve, but you've got to start at some point. You've got to bite the bullet and try to re-aggregate, which means living plants and ground cover and roots, actively growing roots. So, yeah, it's a challenging one, but soil structure's at the heart of the whole thing, really. Yeah.
Challenging question, because I know we have variable seasons, so you might have a flood, you might have a drought for 3 years.
Yeah.
How long does that take to get that aggregation if you're leaving your bare fallow?
Yeah. Or
if you're having the green plants instead of bare fallow.
Yeah, well, just giving you a couple of examples I've seen working with guys that are doing it. There's a cropping system in North Queensland, not in the wet tropics, but in just over on the Atherton, and it was a former sugarcane paddock, and it took a couple of years under cover crops and cattle to start to see, some change, functional change going on. So I guess it depends on what condition the soil is when you start, how bad it is, or is it not too bad, and then two, obviously the rainfall you're getting through the summer and winter period. So do I get enough to grow both crops? So, but yeah, it definitely seems to trigger a change within a couple of years, as long as I've been able to get a few good covers growing. Yeah. There's a cane farmer at up near Tully, Ray Zamora, who's he's been doing covers for a couple of years now, multi-species cover crops, and he's seen a real trigger in aggregation and soil structure improvement within a couple of years. And you could argue, he gets lots of rain. Well, it's true, it's Tully and it's one of the wettest areas of Australia, 3 to 4 metres of rain a year. But their problem is they get waterlogging. They get really heavy rain and they actually get flooded and even just soil saturation. So that's bad as well. And that's their problem. So despite that challenges, he's seeing real structural improvement. We've made a little video on him and he shows his soils in that video, and it's pretty mind-blowing, the structure that he's been able to build in a couple of years. Yeah, so I definitely feel that you can trigger positive change quite quickly within a couple of years. But you do need that opportunity for photosynthesis to happen. Yeah,
I've seen that video. How do people Google to see that video?
If they go to Terrain NRM, so Terrain is the wet tropics sort of NRM or natural resource body, Terrain NRM, and then they just put soil health videos into that in YouTube, then they'll find it. Yeah, Ray Zamora's regenerative cane farming video. Yeah, there's a few other videos on that channel as well. But it's pretty impressive soil that he's showing everyone. Yeah,
I'll put that in the show notes for people so they can have a look at that.
Yeah.
So this is a budgeting decision too. It's not just soil health. So we have farmers that they've got, they're on the fine line. They've had season after season that just hasn't provided.
Yeah.
They know they want to change, but they're going to see that yield loss in those first transition years with leaving their with either having summer covers or transitioning into pasture cropping. How do they work through that?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, but what it involves, in my understanding and the way I sort of see it, is that they've got to look at the whole farm business. What's their level of debt? How much debt do they have to service each year? Because obviously that's the pressure you have if you've got an overdraft or something, or a line of credit. You've got to get a short-term cash crop. But if you're at the point where, the current system has got you to the point where you're really questioning how things go, then you have to do something different, because doing the same thing is going to give you the same result. But it does require looking at the whole business model and the level of debt, and can I put part of the property, can I put part of the property back under pasture and then graze cattle on it, which does give an income, or agist cattle if I don't want to own them, then just agist them. But can I get a return per hectare while I'm building soil health? That's the key bottom line. And there's maybe more than one way to do it. But obviously, if I can get livestock on and make some return on that investment per hectare, then that at least helps fund the soil building. As long as the grazing's done appropriately, then it's going to build soil at the same time. But that's the challenge, is how do I build soil health and keep making some cash flow per hectare? But if you're not doing that at the moment, if one, your soil's declined, and two, you're not going well economically per hectare, then you have to try something new. But it does require really careful sort of whole of farm sort of analysis, and carefully thinking it through and minimising the risk. But not doing anything can be not an option when you've got a big debt burden and things are really, really tight. Then it's a very difficult one, but you've got to try and make a strategic change. Yeah.
There's got to be some type of financial and emotional support for farmers to get through this? Is that available?
Yeah, I guess if you're a farmer and you're entering a new way of farming, then often no, there's no social support. You can be the butt of a lot of jokes down at the pub. So that's where working with other farmers, like-minded farmers, or just being part of a like-minded farming community is so important, because it's that social support that you get. And my expertise, if you like, is extension. That's what I studied and majored in, and that's what I do. And extension's all about helping farmers learn socially, learn together, to deal with their own problems. So that social network is absolutely at the heart of it. So farmers that are isolated, my old boss on the dairy where I worked many years ago, he was very isolated the family was very isolated because they didn't have any other organic farmers near them at all. The rest of them in that region were conventional dairy farmers, and so they were very isolated socially. They had a few friends and they were in the church, etc., but apart from that, they did feel very isolated. But that is the key. So how can you as a farmer, if you're changing over, find and keep engaged with those networks? Use the networks you find, because that's where you'll get other information from other farmers and support from like-minded farmers that are either going through the same challenges you are or have already gone through them, and they can give you tips. So unfortunately the formal extension / agency industry support is not great at helping guys that are out in the innovating into new ways. So really got to help each other.
Yep. There are places, Vic No-Till, I've been involved with them, and gosh, they're supportive. They
exactly.
Just take a new farmer under the arm. You could go to any farm and they'll invite you in and show you. They talk on the phone all the time. They Twitter. It's really important, isn't it? Yeah,
that's it. I mean, they're a great example of a collaborative farm organisation that's supporting its members. So they're a great one, and we're seeing in the cane industry sort of an emerging networks of grassroots cane networks. We've got Central Queensland Soil Health Systems is a group of Mackay sugarcane, mainly sugarcane, but also some beef guys, all focused on improving their soil health, that have just got together and created their own network because they weren't getting support from the mainstream sort of cane industry. But that's changing. The mainstream cane industry is seeing that soil health and what they're doing is important, and starting to give them a bit of support. But there's a couple of these networks are emerging around Australia, because people have just got to get on and survive and thrive. So the organic dairy networks in Victoria, they're certainly try to help their members as well. But it is a challenge. Vic No-Till is a great example of a good network.
Internationally as well, I was speaking to a farmer in WA, and he just contacted Gabe Brown, and I said, I'm coming to South Dakota, can I come and see your farm? And he said yes. And it's fantastic. These regen farmers are really connecting and supporting each other.
They are. It's an alternative community to the industrial model of agriculture, and you have to say that industrial agriculture, and people get upset with that word, but modern agriculture is based on the industrial model of scale, large scale efficiency, and minimising costs and minimising labour. That's the industrial approach to clothes or cotton or whatever you're growing, so or any other food product. But the alternative to that, what you and me are calling regenerative agriculture, it's got to create. Part of it is community, and that's the downside of industrial systems is you tend to lose community networks and strengths often. That's happened in the history of the modern industrial world. So, like people displaced from their home and having to move and all that sort of thing. So, it's trying to rebuild that community. So there is that strong sense of community, and it is global for sure. So that's a good thing. But I guess we've got to keep it local too. The more we can build the local dimension to that, the better it is for someone, in Wangaratta or Parkes or North Queensland or Western Australia somewhere. We've got to build those regional networks too, to give that more personal, localised dimension, keep that going. That's really important.
Absolutely. Nutrisol's building that now. And within 100 kilometres, they're building these hubs.
Yep.
And they're sending out people's emails and phone numbers and encourage them, guys, get together, girls, get together, guys and girls. And it's just working amazingly. We're getting amazing feedback from that. So that's what they're crying out for.
Yeah, and it's the same with the Regenerative Cane Farming Forum coming up. There's this big movement of regen ag, or whatever you want to call it, across the world. But a few of us sort of realise that are in the extension space up there sort of realise that the cane guys are their own unique regional community, and they also need to collaborate at that scale, not just go and see Gabe talk or whatever. So that's sort of an emerging hub up there. But it's humans actually live and learn and enjoy being at that scale if they're connected at that scale of a couple of hundred people. That's actually how we've evolved, as hunter-gatherers in a small band of around 100 to 150 people. So it's actually hardwired in our psychology, that sort of scale of being, learning together, living together, sharing and struggling through life together. So we've got to keep building those smaller scale networks. So it's great what Nutrisource's doing in that regard.
The Regenerative Cane Farming Forum, again, I'll put this in the show notes. It's on the 18th and 19th of March. There's still a few places
there's still
left.
a few places. It's cane specific. We have got a few ring-ins coming from down south, more just to see what it's all about. But it's designed to be for cane farmers. It will be led by cane farmers. So there will be experts there, so to speak, but it's actually all the sessions will be led by farmers that are already doing it. So it's farmer-to-farmer learning. So that's at Ingham. Still a few places. And if you want to come up to the wet tropics and see no-till, cover cropping, all kinds of biofertilisers, controlled traffic, all kinds of tactics and new innovations going on to sort of build a new farming system for the cane guys. The cane guys are building for themselves that's emerging there in the wet tropics of Australia.
Let's talk biofertilisers and bioferments. You do courses on these. What's the difference between a biofertiliser and a bioferment?
Well, they're kind of based on the same technology, which is fermentation. So most people are kind of aware of compost teas, and they've been around for a long time, and that's an oxygen-based biological product where you pump it with a lot of oxygen in the compost tea or compost extract, and so they're what's called aerobic. The other sort of technology for making biostimulants and fertilisers is the fermentation or no oxygen based techniques. So it's sort of taking off a bit because it's probably easier to do than the compost teas. You need less equipment and it's a less finicky. So it's a fermentation based thing where you make your brew or your culture up and then you seal it off and let it ferment. The difference with the ferments and the fertilizers the biofertilizers is really the biofertilizers is a fermentation where you've also added nutrient. So you can make a bioferment which has stimulant compounds in it, biostimulants or plant growth factors, but then you can also add to that nutrient and turn it into a biofertilizer. So they're kind of sort of relatives of the same type of product. But as you know, Nikala, working in the worm leachate business, you've got inoculums that actually have living things in them, like bacteria in the product, or you've got stimulants, which have those growth factor type products in them or substances. And then you've got a biofertilizer, which has nutrients as well as carbon and biochemistry. So they're kind of three product types, if you like. And sometimes a product has all three things in it, But they're both of them together I just call bioferments. So some of them are stimulants, some of them are biofertilizers, and some of them are actually inoculums that you can use for making compost, no-turn compost, or controlling effluent pond odours, things like that.
What's the most popular one that people take on from the courses and use on their own farm?
Usually people try the lactobacillus inoculum first because it's the easiest one to make. But then, there's a number of dairy farmers in Victoria that are really starting to try and make the no-turn compost using an inoculum that you can make on farm. And we've also got guys up in North Queensland and through New South Wales that are doing no-turn composting, which is a really innovative way in that you don't need to use much water. You save about 80% of the water and turning time and machinery that you need in a turned compost. So it's a big game changer as far as water use alone. But yeah, they're the sort of common ones that people are really ringing me up or emailing me after the workshop saying I've got a batch going and it's going all right. So, but yeah, we've got some pretty large scale on-farm composting trials going, or the guys are doing their first sort of year of trialling in Victoria at the moment based on those workshops. They're really popular workshops, that's for sure. The fermentation sort of side of things is getting a lot of interest. Yeah, that's not just with organic or regenerative agriculture guys, but mainstream guys. So we've had to turn away people from some of the workshops. Yeah.
Do they have to bring much on farm to make these things?
No, they're pretty simple. So just things like molasses and sometimes manure, or you can buy your nutrients, minerals if you need to make a biofertilizer or you want to make a biofertilizer. So they're pretty low tech, low cost approaches to things. Yeah, and there are some good commercial products out there, as you know. If they haven't got time to cook things up on their own, culture things on their own place, they can buy. There's a number of pretty good products out there. There's just been the last couple of years international scientific conferences on the biostimulatory products in agriculture. So it's a really exciting new area of science in agriculture. Yeah.
It would seem, if we're trying to build community and making these bioferments, that it might be a great idea for people to get together and make them and share. Do you see that happening ever?
Yeah, well, I guess it's a bit like machinery sharing that some of the cropping guys do. They'll go in on a bit of a consortium and buy a bit of gear and share it around the 3 or 4 guys in the group or people in the group. Same thing, I have come across a couple of farmer groups that make their liquid fertilisers and biological fertilisers and liquid soluble fertilisers too as a collaborative. Yeah, so because that way it can be made in one place. It's more efficient, and then each farmer in the group can just take their what litres they've ordered, take it back on farm. But I think it's definitely a way to look at it. Yeah. An
easy application.
Yeah, well, as long as you set up for liquids. Yeah, and you strain it properly, and then for sure. And I definitely come across growers that came across a couple of growers in central Queensland in the cropping zone up there not long ago who were making liquid ferts with some biologicals to them, and they seem to be getting really good results. Yeah, really reducing their soluble requirements, NPK requirements, and getting similar yields than they used to. And there's stuff happening all over Australia. Yeah, it's just about like the podcast here, just discussing and sharing it so everyone can learn. Yeah.
So do you see changes in nutrient availability without actually putting it on? Is it becoming more available, what's in the soil?
Yeah, I guess that's the challenge with a lot of the biologicals, is that it's a fairly new technology. So we know there's science behind it. I guess the challenge now is how to apply it in different areas, in the different soil types, in different climates, different crops, and get it to trigger those making nutrients available or cycling nutrients better. Yeah, that's the challenge, because you do see it give really good results at times, and then other times you go, oh, I'm not sure whether it gave me a result. But yeah, that's the aim, is to improve nutrient cycling in the soil. And plant stress is the other thing that the science is really indicating. Those biostimulants help with reducing plant stress, like in a really dry period or heat wave or just root shock, at planting. That's where there's quite a lot of science showing that those products probably really help in that regard as well.
Do you think that that's the microbial activity, or it's just the fact that they may have access to more water?
It's probably a bit of both, as well as you might be balancing plant physiology with those growth factors, plant growth factors. So it could be 3 or 4 things happening. Yeah.
What about pH? Do you see pH changing much in a biological system without using lime?
Yeah, I have seen examples of that. You do see examples where when the soil builds that longer term organic matter or humus, where you get humus development, that it seems to buffer severe chemistry. So whether it's salinity or aluminium, changeable aluminium, or sodicity. So as you improve that long-term organic matter or that humus level in the soil, it seems to buffer, or it does buffer, those chemical aspects, which obviously really minimises their impact. Yeah. So I put it down to the colloid in the humus, just acting as a buffer, if you like. So you can see that occur, and you can see, using compost, for example, you can use less lime and get the same result as you used to use with higher rates of lime. And it's just that buffering that the humus, the colloids and things does to the soil. So yeah, I think we can mitigate in many cases we can mitigate some of this chemistry imbalance that we have in soils. We build that humus in the long term and that structure. Yeah, but it's not always easy to do, but that's what we're aiming for. Yeah.
So is what you're saying, do you think that they may not change that dramatically on your soil test, but your yield and visually you're seeing that your soil can manage to work around those restraints?
Yeah, well, you're improving the biological dimension of the soil, and if you improve the root zone and the plant resilience, then the plant's going to be more, it can cope with those shocks to the system better. So you'll even out the yield variability, for example. You know, as the system improves, the yield variability tends to iron itself out, and that's a big saving if your yields from year to year really jump and fall. You know, just evening that out and getting even growth through the year. And there's some orchards in North Queensland, lime orchards, where you see that, where the topsoils are really improved for really good management for a number of years, and the evenness of yields and plant health is just pretty phenomenal. Yeah, with much lower inputs. Yeah.
Do you think that different farms and soil types require different biofertilisers, or do they suit across the board?
Oh, I think it's still to be trialled. We're still learning. Yeah, but I definitely think different situations, you need to take a case-by-case basis. There'll be some products that are really useful across most systems, and worm juice might be one of them because you see that work or effective in different situations, whereas some of the biostimulants might be better for horticulture, or, and I think we're still learning that. I know farmers do or don't get results trialling products, but there hasn't been enough support for the farmers to work out why that worked then and why it didn't work here, or it worked that year but not that year, or it worked on the legume but it didn't work on the cereal. We're early days. I don't know. We're still all learning, and we just probably need a bit more resources on that. Yeah.
What do you think the biggest reason might be for failure if someone was starting into regen ag and then they decide to stop?
Yeah, well, it could be a number of things. It could be a lack of confidence, or they didn't have a support network around them to help them. So they got to a point and they didn't have the confidence to make that next decision, that major management decision. So they pull up at that point. And a guy that I've worked with for a long time, very experienced regenerative farmer, once said to me many years ago, there's no point learning how to stand up while you're water skiing and then asking the boat to slow down, because you're just going to fall back in the water. Once you learn how to stand up, you've got to let the boat go faster so you stay up. And I've never forgotten that, in my extension role, because that's the challenge, is once you're on the path to change, there's no point part changing, because you won't be successful. You have to take the full leap. If it's a major change, it's different than if you're just tweaking machinery or changing from product A to product B. That's a minor change. But if you're doing a major change on your farm business, you can't do it half. You've got to do it whole. You've got to do the whole thing. And that requires that confidence within yourself to go through. And that's a scary thing, whether it's a farm business or a consultancy business or a bakery. If you do a major change, it's a big risk. So I think one of the things is having a support network, and if that's not there, then someone can get to the point where they don't feel confident to take those next few steps that they needed to take, or they didn't have a complete understanding of what they needed to do. There was a few parts of the puzzle missing. So you'll hear people change something and say it didn't work, but they might have missed a key aspect that they had to also put in place. Like pasture cropping, you see that sometimes, where the guys get some parts to the system, but they've missed a couple of key things, and it's only by doing them that the system would work. So there's a couple of things going on, but they're two of the big ones, I think. But again, it's coming back to what we said initially in the go. It's farming's a package deal, a farming system's a package deal, and you've got to really build an understanding of the whole system and how it all interacts, so that way when you change it, you're not missing any of the parts to the puzzle, because otherwise it may not work.
People come in and they want to increase their profit, so it's really a monetary thing to begin with. Yeah. Things aren't working. Yeah. Do you see them then start feeling better about working in the regen ag space because it's better for the environment, better for human health? Is that a driver in the end once they get through that whole process?
Look, I think for some people it is. other people it's not as important. But a lot of farmers that I've worked with over my career, they enjoy it. It's a very challenging profession. It's a very good profession, and if you do it well, it's a very satisfying profession. And I think what I've observed, listening and learning with farmers for 20 years plus in this space, is that they actually start to really enjoy the challenge of agriculture again. It's not brain dead. It's actually challenging. They're in control of things. They're learning new things. They're achieving outcomes. They're not at the whim and mercy of, the debt that they were on, or, they're better able to manage climate risk. You can't say that they've got rid of it, but they feel more confident in dealing with it. It's just a much more positive sort of way to live. And I think that's what you see. You see people start to actually enjoy that family farming that they obviously loved, which is why they were in it for the first place. Yeah. So that's a really positive thing, because whatever industry you're in, you want it to be a positive, forward-moving, progressive industry, don't you? And I think that's what you see in the regenerative ag space, most of the time,
Fantastic. Yeah. Great to have the conversation, David.
Oh, thanks, Nicola, for having me in. It's
My
been
pleasure.
Good. Yeah.
So stay tuned, everyone. David and I will be joining forces up at the Regen Cane Farming Forum on the 18th and 19th of March, interviewing some farmers together. So if you want to hear more of these conversations, subscribe and share this podcast. Thanks, everyone. Please follow the Biological Farming Roundtable podcast. Share it with your friends and networks. I'm Nicola Maddock and I work at Nutrisoil, a liquid biological fertiliser made from a big worm farm whose purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food.